Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and
Hello.
together we are ThinkerThemer, and welcome back to another episode of 10, out of 10, where we rate all of the games in our collection, 10 games at a time, on a scale of 1 to 10. Lots of 10 things. Lots of 10 things.
It's very 10-10.
Yeah, so let's get straight into it. We've got a mixture of old and new today.
Starting with something that is more on the new side. So this is Isle of Trains, All Aboard. And in Isle of Trains, we're going to be, both building our little train engine. We're going to be upgrading our engine so we can add more cars to our train as well. The whole idea of this is we're using multi-use cards that are, some of them are going to be, like the idea is that they can be the engine, but they can also be the cargo that goes into the different types of cars. So some of them are going to carry, like boxes or coal or fuel. And then some of them are going to carry passengers. So the interesting thing with this is as you're playing it, the cost to play those cards is other cards. So you're having to manage that balance kind of along the way. But then, like with old trains, we're going to be delivering or dropping off a lot of those things that we're loading onto those trains. A tricky thing about this is when you're loading those either passengers or goods onto opponents' trains, you're also getting additional benefits, which can be very, very powerful sort of along the way.
But then, of course, they get the ability to drop them off, deliver them somewhere and get all the benefits. So you've got to weigh up, do I want to keep it for myself and get no instant benefit? Or do I want to give it away to my opponent and maybe get to draw some more cards or do something else that's fun?
And then in the central kind of area, you have the sort of isle, which is all of the different locations or destinations that either need particular goods, so you're going to be fulfilling kind of contracts and essentially getting points from that, or also delivering passengers. And when you deliver passengers, which again, all of these would have to be in your engine, then you're also going to be getting kind of different rewards and points and things like that. So ultimately, it also has the solo mode, which is actually quite a nice solo mode as well, because there's no automa or anything to facilitate, which is my favorite type of solo mode. It also has little scenarios, and all that really changes is that then you actually you have a limited time, so it's like as you go through the deck, that's it, but then you're also going to be getting the benefit when you're loading onto your own engines, which is quite nice after playing the multiplayer and going, I'm giving you all
giving you all my stuff.
Now it's like I get to have the stuff and the benefit.
A couple of things I really like about this game is that it is a lot of game in a very small box.
It really is,
So because of the multi-use card component, the fact that the aisle that you're delivering across, that is also just cards. It makes really good use of box space.
Yes.
This is the deluxe edition, and so there's some really nice things in here, like all of the, actually I don't know how it compares to the retail copy, but everything in here is quite luxe in terms of the meeples.
Yeah, the meeples
the
are
beautiful
pretty cool.
bag that they come in. So it feels like, you're getting a lot of game in a tiny, tiny box that's very easy to take traveling, and it has like a bigger game feel when you play it. Like it's not quick and short filler game.
No, it feels like a medium complexity, and I find it really satisfying. So what rating did you give?
I feel as though I really enjoyed the multi-use card component of it. I really enjoyed the hand management element of it. But for me, it almost feels like a bit pick up and delivery, even though you're not really moving your train from one spot to another. You are loading up your train and then making deliveries. And for me, that's probably like less fun for me. I just don't find that like process is fun.
Do you have something with pick up and deliver? There's something about pick up and deliver, even in this very rarely works for me. But I really appreciate the way that the cards are used, horizontally and vertically to represent different things. And once you get a feel for that, at first it's a bit overwhelming, but once you get a feel for that, I really liked it. I liked upgrading my train as well. But for me, probably like I don't know. It's the pick up and deliver bit, and it's also the I found it a little bit fiddly with the moving things around and placing cards the cards
under.
in, and then when you're delivering them, you have to pull them out, and it's not a big deal, but it's just it can be a little fiddly.
Yeah, on top of just a train theme, which I like. Okay, okay. You probably like it more than me. Let's see. So Isle of Trains, I gave it a 7.1. I think it's really clever. I think a lot of people are really going to like this game, but for me, it just didn't hit as hard as say, a multi-use card game like Forest Shuffle recently. I think that just thematically it works a bit better for me and it was a bit more streamlined.
Yeah, I definitely did like this more. It's a 7.7 for me.
Oh.
Yeah, I really find it satisfying.
Right.
Interestingly, like I find it really satisfying as I'm doing it in a multiplayer scenario. When I'm playing solo, even though I'm getting to only focus on my game, I actually found that because I don't resonate as much with trains, I was like, oh, I don't kind of feel like being in this train world by myself.
Yeah, and there is bits of interaction. I really like when you're putting the meeples out, the trigger of the end game as well. And so you're like keeping an eye on how many benefits have been taken with the meeples.
But also as you're delivering the different, like the different meeples have different colors based on the destination that they want to go to. As you're delivering them to the different destinations and you're seeing what meeples people have, what color meeples they have in their car, in their train, you're also, the rewards start getting less and less. So the later you deliver to a destination, the less the reward. So I think that also adds a little bit of excitement. Whereas when you're playing by yourself, it's,
Yeah. When I'm looking over at you and you've got the same coloured meeple, I'm like, no, I want to get there first. Don't go there.
Right, so that's Isle of Trains.
Isle of Trains. This next one is a card game, which is really interesting because it was developed by a band called the Decemberists, which I don't know anything about the band.
I'd never heard of them.
Cooler people than I.
Way cooler people than
might
us.
know about the band. I just know about the board game. And this is a game that is a little bit of I would say it's a bit of a cult favorite. Like, you see it pop up every now and then. And people really love it for its, did I even say it's called Illimat? Probably not.
Yeah,
Illimat.
It's Illimat.
But it's a card game. It has a really wonderful table presence. It's got this beautiful, like, linen kind of board. Not board, but sheet, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you're placing cards out, and when you set up the game, you're placing 3 cards out in each of the corners, and then you put the box, so the bottom of the box, into the center, and that is going to turn throughout the game and change the way that the cards are able to be used in each of the corners. So you're going to be turning that box around. Then you also have these like tarot cards that are face down in each of the corners, and these I think they're called luminaries, are going to reveal themselves throughout the game and change the rules as well. And so it's not actually that difficult to play, but it has this beautiful presence. All the cards are black and white, all the regular cards, and then there's these beautiful luminary cards that, have that tarot card feel. And then there's these very strange, like, metal objects that also go in the center of the board, and you're going to collect them and they're going to be worth points as well. So there's a lot of interesting design choices that make it feel much more than a regular card game.
And its own soundtrack as well. Which,
of course, because
we tried playing with the soundtrack, but I think we weren't in the right... Like, this game is actually, I'm going to say, very atmospheric. It kind of creates this, or hints at this sort of atmosphere, and some people that love this game, they actually go full out, like have lights turned down, have candles, play the soundtrack, which I would usually love, like as a themer, but we always, for some reason, because it's a card game, we always would end up playing it, like we played this a lot in like airports.
We played
this
like, so much in airports. So actually it's not that easy to find here in Australia, but I found it in the States, and we carried it on us throughout our recent travels to GenCon, and we played so much of this, just Maggie and I, in the airports. But it's an interesting one because it's like a game for me that is almost great. Like, it is relaxing. So what you're doing is you are trying to collect as many cards from the central area as possible by matching with numbers in your hand. So basically, you've got 3 actions available to you. You can either put your cards out into the central playing area. You can stockpile them by making sets that add up to the same number. And then, importantly, you can harvest them. So if you can match them with cards in your hand, you can harvest them and put them into your harvest pile. And what you're trying to do is get as many cards as you can, more than your opponents. You want to get as many summer cards as you can, and you want to get as few winter cards as you can, because they're going to be worth negative points if you have the most of them.
There might be some of those other cards that like mess around with those rules a little bit. Like,
So anytime you play a face card down, it's going to shift the box in the center, and then it's going to make it such that for this game now, in this quadrant of the board, you can't actually harvest cards from there. So you've got to wait until it turns again, or you've got to manipulate that so that you can then harvest some cards.
Yeah.
So the rule set is not difficult, and it's a very like cruisy game. And I actually really found it like it got more and more addictive as we were playing it. But for me, it just now that it's back home in amongst all the other card games that we own, I feel like it doesn't quite have that like, ooh, I can't wait to get that off the shelf. Because it's got a relaxed vibe to it. Like if it was there and maybe and we were somewhere where we just wanted to kill some time.
Yeah. I feel like it had some of that satisfaction of, a card game. Like obviously we love trick-taking games, so that whole like, matching a couple numbers and you're getting to, have something exciting kind of happen. But then it was almost like when we were playing it, it's like I don't find it as satisfying as I do trick-taking. It is obviously very like fairly abstract, even though you're sowing and like harvesting. I mean, that's I sort of felt like when we were playing it, it sort of felt more like this is nice, but it's almost like a compromise where if I had any other card game that I really like, I would play that.
That's what I mean. Now that we've got it back, it's like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about it. So anyway, I gave it a 7, just because over time I feel like, when we started playing it, I was like, yeah, this is great. And I was actually the one that was like, Maggie, let's play again. And Maggie's like, have we played this like 63 times? Can we please stop? But I don't know. Now that it's back home, I just grabbed so many other card games over this.
I'm going to say it's a 7 for me as well. But but that's it is obviously a fairly abstract. I really do like as I said, that atmosphere or the atmosphere potential that it creates with the components and the...
I really like the luminary cards too, because and like, annoyingly, like a lot of gamers would be like, well, they don't even have the writing on them. Like, it just looks
what
like
they do.
Yeah, that doesn't tell you what their actions are. You have to look it up. But after a while, you get to know what they are. And, so they've made some choices to make it like the table presence that it is. Yeah. And I do appreciate that for just it being quite strange. But anyway, that is Illimat. Should we go next? Yeah, let's do a bigger game.
So the next game is called Roll Camera, which has a wonderful little, obviously it's all movie themed, and it's got a clapper or a slate. Yes, a movie slate.
You taught me that.
I did teach you that. I did filmmaking in my younger years, so I could relate to a lot of what this game is sort of commenting on or trying to recreate. So in Roll Camera, we are going to be cooperating, working together to create a film. And it's apparently this is like this film production is like the production company is in distress, and this is the last chance that you get to make a film that's going to save the company. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be we all have a unique role. So someone might be the director, someone might be the like sound designer, or different kind of roles, and we all have like a slightly asymmetric kind of abilities that we can do based on our roles. We're going to be using dice. The dice are going to represent different crew or elements of a film. So it could be, again, the sound, the lighting, the actors. And we're going to be placing those dice in different locations on the board. The whole idea of this is all of those things that we're going to be doing is so that we can essentially dress the set to then film some scenes that then will end up in our movie, and hopefully we end up with a movie that's either of really great quality or so bad in quality that it's actually great. So
I love that. I love that thematically.
Yeah.
You want to make that like B grade, like terrible movie.
Yeah. That's a really, really nice touch. So in terms of the way it kind of works, there's a lot of like jokes or little in-jokes or comments of, if you've done any kind of filmmaking or if you're a fan of films and filmmaking and the filmmaking process, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's referencing that. For example, as someone who's worked in film, I always said when I studied film and worked in film, like any film that gets made and finalized is a little miracle. Like there is so much that can and does go wrong. And it's like there's just so high stakes all the time, so many people and so many things to coordinate. Mm-hmm. So they actually have built in a constant flow of problems that arise.
I mean, that's one of the main things that you're trying to tackle in this game is just like the problems.
Problem.
Like round
It's a
after
problem
round,
deck.
new
Yeah,
problem, new problem.
And they accumulate if you're
Yeah.
not dealing with them. So there's the problems that arise. Then there's the script, which is essentially you have this which is quite nice the way that they've kind of done the top script and bottom script cards that then kind of hint at what's the movie that you're trying to make. So either genre and then even the title, which it's really cool, the different variations of titles that you can get. So that gives you something to aim for in terms of what's going to make that quality go up or down. But then you also have the storyboard, which are the scenes that you're going to try and film. And those scenes have essentially the requirements on them of what type of placement you would need those dice in. And
Which
what
is like,
type of dice.
Kind of like polyomino
It is a little
shapes.
bit shaping, yeah. And so then in the center, you have essentially the studio where you're going to be dressing the set with that's the core kind of central puzzle where you're putting all these, you're bringing in these different tiles with these little blue different areas where you can then place those dice. And so some of the actions that you can do is you're putting dice, and the different dice worker placements, I guess, have different requirements.
But like it's so thematic because you're like setting up the set to look like what the script is telling you to set
exactly.
it up.
So
and then,
you're matching the storyboard.
And then when you get it, you get to turn it over and it has like the full movie frame that you add to the
editing queue. Yeah, so it's like that.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, so it's sort of like the editing room where you're kind of piecing it together. And then ultimately, as you're doing that, then obviously your quality is going up and down. On top of that, there's also like these two trackers of budget and your schedule. So it has to come under budget. Everything that you do is going to take time and it's going to take money. And so those dials are going to be going down and down and down. Then the other bit that's really hilarious is when you can hold meetings, like team
with
meetings.
your ideas.
And so you all have these wacky ideas of like, oh, I've got an idea of how we can maybe save some money or how we can, rearrange something or we can, and that is hilarious. So like the way that the wording and the problem, the creative problem solving that they put into things is also sometimes outrageous, but also things that probably have happened in a lot of sets, across the world.
Yeah, I really like that, but I also like the ideas component mechanically. I'm, not a huge fan of cooperating. But when you hold this meeting and someone has to, I think, trash an idea, one of them can be kept for later.
Yeah, so you have a to-do list. So one of them gets discarded, one goes into the to-do list, which means that you can do it at a later time, and one is the one that gets action. So
I like that negotiation part of it because it feels like a meeting because you're like, no, my idea is a good idea.
There's always got to be some compromise. Be like, no, I guess your idea is better. That's better. Yeah. So that's essentially the game. So my rating, I actually gave this a 7.3. So, and I think a big part of what's sort of, because obviously, like, this is it's a beautiful production. So many of these elements are so quirky and adorable. And
not
even
to mention the box and the inside of the box.
And this is I believe this is a deluxe edition. There's a retail edition that has a normal box, and the inside it doesn't have that film can roll in a plastic version. It doesn't have that, but everything else should be the same. So I love all of those components. I love all of those little insider jokes about the film industry. But ultimately, I think the nature of that core puzzle is fairly abstract, and the cooperating.
Really, you don't find it thematic? Oh, you mean the center puzzle?
The center puzzle, because you're trying to figure out how to align, how to orient like different things, and then going, well, which scene do we match it with? And so and then the cooperating part. It's like this is where we start. Right?
For me, it's that's what brings it down. This is a hard one for me because it's just not our style of game generally speaking.
It's really good if you like this type of game.
If you like this kind of game, it's going to be one of those like cozy cooperative games, cup of tea, dealing with all the problems going on
and
when you're making your film.
Like it's just
because I actually find it very thematic in all the trimmings and the way that everything comes together. But for me, cooperating tends to only work if there's like some kind of timed element where we're under pressure and there's no time to talk, or we're not allowed to talk. So if there's like limited communication, those are the co-ops that actually have been kept in our collection and work really well. So for me, this one's a little bit lower. It's a 7.1. I appreciate so much about it, but again, it's just not for me. But I feel like a lot of people love this game, and check it out if you're interested.
Charming.
In
Like I just find it so charming, and I wish, again, it's just a style thing. I wish
we liked working together, but we really don't. We really don't.
Unless it's like hidden information, unless we're not actually really talking shooting, just hoping that the other person does the right thing and doesn't mess things up. Yeah.
Okay, next game is Tiger and Dragon. And Tiger and Dragon is actually a game that was... I may have added to a little bit of the hype around this game because I
think you almost single-handedly made it
sell
out.
I put it on our most anticipated GenCon list because it was just an obscure title that I was trying to get in Japan, and then I found out it was actually going to be there at the Oink booth at GenCon.
Yeah.
And so it was the first place I went, and I thought it would sell out, but actually it did originally sell out, and then they got more of them, so it didn't really. So I probably didn't need to go there first, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Tiger and Dragon is a shedding game. So if you're familiar with games like Scout, where you're trying to get rid of your cards. However, in this game, the cards are replaced by these beautiful mahjong tiles in two different colors. So there's red and there's teal. And all of the numbers, the way that the deck distribution of numbers works is that there is 1 1, 2 2s, 3 3s, and so on and so forth, all the way up to 8 8s. And so all of these tiles are being distributed randomly to the players in the game. And then what's going to happen is the active player is going to play a tile. So the first player is going to play the first tile, and then the next player in turn order, just going clockwise, has the opportunity, this is called an attack, has the opportunity to defend. And the way they defend is simply by playing the same tile. So if I played an 8 and Maggie has an 8, she can play the 8, and then she becomes the active player who now gets to lead by playing a new tile as an attack for the person on their left. Instead of attacking, you can simply, instead of defending, you can just pass. And if it goes all the way around the circle and everybody passes, that's great for you because you get to shed any tile, place it face down, and then you get to lead again by putting out another attack. And so what you're trying to do is work out who has which tile, how many tiles are already placed down because all the tiles that have been played are in view of everybody. And then you're trying to be the first person to get rid of all of your tiles. If you do, it's important to end with the final tile that is going to score you the most points. And this is where the variability comes into the game, because in this game there is a stack of these cardboard sheets that dictate how the game is going to be scored. And they're all slight variations on each other. Yeah. So maybe you want to go out with the highest number possible or the lowest number possible. Or maybe there's some other way that you score based on, getting points for the number of tiles that everybody has face down. So you're looking at the scoring and trying to work out what is the best order in which to shed your tiles, but also you just need to do that first.
Yeah. Otherwise there's nothing for you.
There are also two other tiles in this game that act like wilds, the tiger and the dragon. So one teal tile, one red tile, and these can be played to basically defend any other tile in the game. But if they're your last tile that you play to go out in the game, they get you no points. So you need to get rid of them early, and you need to work out at what point you want to take the lead off the person who's maybe they're doing a run of lots of passing because they know nobody else has a 2 because they're all out, and then nobody else has a 3, and you're like, no, hang on, okay, I'm putting a stop to this. Yeah. I'm going to play this.
But again,
wild.
And that stop only really works for that. So only works for that type. So because you have the red and the teal. So is the dragon the red? I can't remember now. The dragon is the red. So that'll stop any red tiles, which are the odd number tiles. So if you've got, obviously like either color blindness or any sort of visual impairment, it's odds and evens. So I like that. And again, you might have, I've got the last, what I think is going to be the last 3, but I can see that the red dragon hasn't come out and I don't have it. So I know that if I play it, there's a likelihood that someone's
just going to get annoyed with me.
But if I see that the red dragon's already out, then it's like...
Free for all.
I'm unstoppable now.
There's a couple of things that's interesting about this game. First, it is way simpler than what I thought it would be.
Super simple.
I just explained the rules. You're basically playing a card and then defending it with the same tile.
Mahjong tile.
Yeah. But in terms of shedding games, it's super simple.
Very simple.
Because you're not playing multiples of anything. It's just one tile at a time, and it's the exact same tile. Yeah. But the way that this becomes good and interesting is in that dynamic of card counting, I'll call it, but not really. But because they're tiles, because they're chunky, because they sit on a board in front of the players, there is like full information about what's been out. I will say though, at different player counts, there are a different number of tiles that are taken out of the game, so you never can be 100% sure that the tile even exists in the game that you're playing. But from that element, you are like, well, you know, all the 7s are out. It's probably a pretty safe tile to play now. And that kind of element also is just like, the strategy kind of builds, like at what point do I want to pass, at what point do I want to use that wild, and how am I going to end on a tile and finish the game and end on the best scoring tile if I don't have control of the game. And that's like the interesting elements. And when we first played it and when I first learned it, I was like, really? Is that it? This is what I was so excited about. How is this possible? But, you know, we've played this with lots of different gamers, like gamers who are newer to the hobby, gamers who are extremely good at the hobby. You know who you are for talking. You know, Euro gamers. But yeah, I just found that no matter who we played it with, everybody really enjoyed it. I think there's something really nice about such a simple rule set.
The tiles are obviously so satisfying as well. Like that mahjong kind of tile.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the numbers, you know, you can kind of figure them out, but the almost like the
font choice
is not the easiest to read. But because there's obviously not that much, you can kind of figure it out.
And the variability is like, I don't know how much interest I have in all of the different scoring, because they're really just variations
on the same thing.
Like it probably just mixes it up if you're playing multiple games in a row. But like
we would play like 2 or 3 games and be like, okay, I feel like we're done.
Like, but it's such a nice intro before a heavier game, and it's just a game that's like so easy that it's like the rules are in your head, so you don't have to like pull out the rule book.
I really like, because obviously in this one, because you don't have a powerful, like the defense is never like, whoa, power combo, or like it's not like that satisfying, oh, now I get to kind of shed this spread out of my hand. Like you're only ever doing one tile at a time. The whole satisfaction of it is in trying to get the lead, and then the sequence of the leads that you can manage to, like how long you manage to defend that, hopefully, until you reach that final tile and go, haha, I'm done.
And there is something weirdly satisfying in that one choice. Like, do I play my 1, my 5, or my 8? And you're just staring there thinking, All
right, what's your rating for this?
For Tiger and Dragon, I gave it a 7.4. Only because there's something about accessibility that if you watch the channel, you'll know that I just really appreciate a game I can grab, throw in my backpack, and, you know, take it to work and teach it super quickly, play it over a lunch break, and feel like, you know, that was really satisfying and fun.
This is interesting. This is actually higher for me. It's a 7.5, so only a little bit higher. I think I just really like the mahjong tiles. Like, it's just, I just find that really satisfying. Like, anything that's tactile in a game, I'm like,
That's the thing, is if this was a card game, I'd probably be a little bit bored by it.
Be way lower.
Which is outrageously stupid.
I also really like how much they sort of made the most out of all the packaging. So you have the player boards also have these, like, the punched out what the tokens are going to be that are the points, and then essentially you just have the holes, which becomes then very cleverly a almost double layered board, because it's sort of like you got the holes, and so you're putting them back in, and you have that like, it fits. So that I was very amused by that production. I think
so this is an Oink game, one of the largest Oink games size wise.
Probably like four boxes, four
regular
Oink
games. So that is Tiger and Dragon. Which way do you want to go next?
Oh, let's go over there.
Oh, Majesty for the Realm. Obscure choice.
It's an obscure choice. I knew nothing about this, and then you picked this up.
Yeah, because I played it at Dice Tower West
with
the Joey fam. So thank you, Don and Adrian, for teaching this one. This was one that I hadn't heard of prior to that. This is a couple of years ago now.
Yeah. It's an older game. I can't remember off the top of my head which year, but
it's a much older game, but I played it for the first time I think 2 years ago. But it's by Marc Andre, and if you know the little game Splendor, well, this was the same designer and also has the same chunky, satisfying
little pokey chip
things that probably
always good.
Yeah, probably over time Splendor has become less and less, like those have become probably cheaper and cheaper in quality. But this one has the original original heavy little.
Well, and they're smaller,
tokens.
so it's still like, it's always so satisfying when you have a little, a poker chips to play around with.
Anyway,
Majesty for
What
the
are we
Realm.
doing?
Majesty for the Realm. It's one of those. You're trying to create the wealthiest or the richest village, and if you do, you'll get the crown. You'll get to be the new, I don't know.
Seems easy.
It seems too easy. So what you're going to be doing in this game is you have everyone starts with the same kind of spread of all these different village positions, so or kind of like jobs, or like you have the inn and the miller and the brewer and the guards and like all of these destinations. And so you're going to be recruiting different I guess characters that match those different locations. As you're recruiting those characters, they're going to be in a central market where the cost of recruiting them is going to be with these kind of like, is it like the inhabitants or the villagers? So you have these little villager meeples, and you have to do that sort of. The first one is free, but if you want to go further into the market, you have to be drop one of your little tokens or your little meeples along the way for each one. So it becomes more and more expensive if you're wanting to jump the queue. So for example, if I get the miller character, that's going to come into my miller, and then all of those locations will give you coin based on different conditions. So for example, the miller might give you, off the top of my head, it's like 2 coins for every other miller that you have, for every miller that you have. But then you might have, for example, the inn. The inn, when you bring someone to the inn, it might score for both the inn, so every character you have in the inn, but also every character that you have in this other place.
Yeah.
When you have
every type of card has a power, and the only way you can activate that column or that power is to recruit a new worker into that space.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes it interesting, because you are trying to collect up, because of some of the scoring conditions, you want to have you kind of want to have diversity, but you also want to have more of one type of card than anybody else around the table, but also on top of that, you want to activate the powers, and so that choice is like really interesting. So what's seemingly a very easy turn in this game, which is all you do in this game, is you pick one card from the market, pay for it if you need to, and you bring it back and activate it, and that is it.
Yeah, but then at the end of the game, there's also going to be points for a few things. One is for every location, so for a variety of location. So say, for example, if I ended up in 5 locations, then that 5 gets multiplied by itself. If I ended up in 7 locations, it's 7 times 7. So it's like you also have this, it's again that tension between, do I really double down on just a couple of places, but then I'm going to be missing out on a lot of points at the end if I don't have a little bit of variety.
Yeah, but also there's this like interaction element where if someone is, because some of the areas have powers or benefits to other players if they have also collected a certain type of card. And so if someone is activating a power and everybody else is benefiting, and you're like, oh man, I have underinvested in that and I am not getting the benefit, and they're going to keep activating that, so I need to so there's this like weird tension where you're looking around and you're like, I haven't done enough, I need to get more, and it feels like you're always shifting your focus because you're like, well, I don't have brewers, like I'm not taking advantage of that.
Yeah, there's a lot. So with I think it's like with the brewers, every time there's an innkeeper, like the brewers get to score again, which again, I'm going to say actually not again, like thematically, I really enjoy how all of those locations make sense.
Yes.
Like there's those synergies of course, if you're a miller, it's beneficial for you when there's now more brewers in town because they're going to buy your stuff.
But
and
also,
the same with
there's that element of attacking and defending as well.
I despise that.
Yeah,
but it's fun, like in a sort of fun way.
Is it soldiers? There's
there's the defense guards, but then there's also like the soldiers that attack.
Yeah, so when you collect a soldier card and you add it to your tableau, you are essentially attacking everybody else around the table, and they need to have more defense than your attack in order to not be damaged. And because what happens is the card that is leftmost in your tableau gets sent to the infirmary, and then you need to heal them in order to bring them back, otherwise they're going to be worth -1 point at the end of the game. So there's these baked in like interactivity kind of things going on where you're constantly like, do I have enough of that card based on what everybody else is doing around the table? And that's what I really like about this game. It is like so simple to teach because really all you're doing is collecting coins and collecting one card at a time. And it makes sense that you bring it back and it activates that. but it's the layers
Yeah,
of
I agree.
what
And
other people are
there's
doing.
variability. So you have an A side and then a B side. The B side is a little bit more
the cards.
of the cards. Yes, more it's trickier. So like the synergies and even like areas are riskier. So for example, the infirmary, it's not just you're not gonna just lose 1 point. You're gonna lose 2 points per card that ends up there. But also we didn't mention that there's majority. So you also get to score points for having majority in each one of those locations, and they increase. So some of the ones that may not give you as much stuff along the way or may not seem as valuable along the way are probably going to give you a higher majority score if you do end up having the majority there. And that side with the infirmary, the kind of more advanced side, it's minus 10 points if you have the majority in that. So it and then you can kind of mix and match as well. So but what score did you give this?
I gave this a 7.5, which is in hindsight maybe a little low now that I'm talking about it, but
getting more excited about it.
Yeah, I get excited about it when I talk about it because again, this gets points for me for being super accessible. It's really charming. There's something about it that is just like really satisfying.
Enjoy it.
The way you build up your tableau. I think the thing that brings it down for me is that over game sessions, it's like it's come down in like my excitement level. So at first I the first time I was introduced to this, I was like, wow, the novelty slowly wore off, and sometimes it hits better with groups than others. But in terms of like having an easy rule set, it's like 20 to 30 minutes. It's a great filler. But it's got that satisfying, like you feel like you're playing a full board game because of the size of it and everything.
I really like this. I've got to give this an 8. So
I
really
I wasn't expecting it to be that high.
Yeah, I really enjoy my time with this. I think it's those little thematic connections give me enough that I'm like, ooh, and then as I'm recruiting them and I'm like sort of every game I can sort of go, oh, maybe I'll try and explore these synergies or those synergies.
Yeah,
so
you know what it feels like? A little bit like Machikoro. Like it has that like recruit because other people are doing certain things and you're trying to defend yourself and so
there you go. So that's Majesty for the realm.
Yeah. I'll go over here for one of the big ones.
Okay.
Mix it up and go over my side again.
All right.
But this is a new game that we picked up at GenCon. It's not a new game. It's a new implementation and expansion for the original Brussels game. Or there's actually a few in the Brussels series. But this is Brussels 1893. Where you are, I just realized as I started talking that thematically it's a little bit loose for me. But basically what you're doing in Brussels is you are architects and you are trying to develop your buildings. You are also collecting artwork and showing off your art collection and buying and selling art to make money as well. And you're basically being a bit of an aristocrat as well. You are like dealing in politics and you are currying the favor of the lords.
Yeah, like the sponsors or the patrons that, will kind of give you different favors and stuff. Yeah.
But this is like an old school dry Euro. Dry as dry can be. You get to choose, there's 5 player boards in here. You can choose which white male you would like to play as.
3 of which are called Paul.
3 of them are called Paul.
Granted, like these are like based on historical figures and things like that. But like there were no women in this time.
The gender representation in this game is terrible. And like I just need to talk about this point before I move on to how the game plays. But there is a woman on the cover. Yeah. There is also a giant woman on the board
that does nothing. It's quite literally for decorative purposes.
She is
only
ornamental.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, all of the cards, so the people, the lords that are giving you
sponsors and all
all white men. Yeah. I don't feel great about that for a game coming out in 2023 that has had redesigned artwork. Like, please be better. That is we can do better than that. But anyway, I'm going to talk about the game.
Also because it's like Belle Epoque, so it's all about like bringing in the new era of like culture and prosperity if you're a white man.
Oh, there were no women in 1893.
Well, there were, but they were there they were holding they were holding a lemonade for you when you were done with your hard work of putting all your.
All right. That's enough of the side.
Enough of that. Right.
So this is a very dry Euro, but it's kind of interesting. It has a strong worker placement element to it, where you have at the start of the game a limited number of workers, 5 workers, I believe, at the start of the game. There's 2 more that you can recruit along the way. You're going to be placing them out onto this very abstract grid-like board. But in order to go and take an action, you need to bid money. And that's a really interesting dynamic in this game, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to have bid the most amount of money in a column to get an end of round bonus that changes every round, because they're cards at the bottom. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep an eye on, okay, I want to go to this worker placement spot, but Maggie's already had 2 people in that column and has a total of $3. So maybe I will just put $4 there and secure that bonus for the end of the round. The other thing is that there are these irises or flowers that are on the board, and as you surround them, the person who has the most presence around that flower is also going to score points at the end of the round. Yeah. So there are these 2 majority area control elements to the game, on top of the difficulty of actually you needing to go to a worker placement spot where only 1 worker is allowed to go. So, and what are you trying to get done in this game? Well, you are trying to collect artwork, and then you are trying to manipulate the price of the art, of the way of the color of your artwork is sold by moving this strange grid-like, very Euro-esque dynamic where you are trying to balance the number of points that you receive, victory points and money. Money is incredibly important in this game because, as I mentioned, you can't even place a worker unless you put a bid in that central space. So you're trying to get artwork, you're trying to sell artwork. You're also trying to build the buildings that are on your player board. So you are removing them, and they're going to be worth quite a lot of victory points if you can do it by using the resources, the core resources, and not the wild resources. And there's another really interesting dynamic in this game where I can see how this has flowed through to other games. But in the corner of the board, there is a dial that turns according to, every time a player builds, they get the opportunity to turn this dial, but it tells you what type of resource you need in order to build the houses on your board. So the houses on your board, they escalate in terms of the number of resources, but you don't know what those resources are. You have to look at the board and that's going to tell you. So it might be that you need iron and only iron, or now you need to pay 3 coins and have at least 1 yellow cube. I forgot what the yellow cube is. Is that the iron one?
Yeah,
it's very abstract.
It does not matter. Yeah,
it does not matter. There is brown, blue, and yellow, and then there's a wild white. But if you can build without having to use the wilds, then you get more victory points. But also, when you build, you put it out onto the worker placement spots. And now, anytime in the rest of the game, when a player takes that spot and goes on top of your building, you get a benefit for them doing so. So you've also got to think carefully about where you want to go. There's another crazy element in this game in that at the beginning of every round, the first player gets to choose between 2 placement spots for this little, like
an L-shaped
set square
marker
thing.
Yeah.
Weird little, L-shaped marker that is going to carve off part of the board. And that scales depending on the player count, but it's going to carve off part of the board, and that's going to be the area that we're going to be playing in this round, which means that if you've got the choice of that, you can carve out other people's houses such that they're not even available as a worker placement spot.
This round.
Yeah, and then there's other elements going on. You can collect these what are they called? I keep calling them lords.
Oh, they're patrons, I think.
Patrons that come into your tableau area, and there are ways that you can tap those to get benefits throughout, but you need to pay them off at the end of the game. So there's quite a few things that you're juggling here, classic Euro style. And for me, I can absolutely appreciate why this is a classic. There's a lot of really cool mechanics that are going.
There's a lot of really intriguing levers, essentially, and a lot of kind of going. Oh, you could go in different strategies that you could tackle. You could go artwork strong, or you could go sponsor, or what did I just say that I called them? The other patron strong, or just like building strong, or a little bit of a variety. So I like that about it.
I would talk about the other side of the board, because the whole thing with this
expansion,
this edition is that it does come with an expansion, but actually it's a combination of different expansions. So it introduces a number of things, a new resource that's like these glass little beads. It introduces the ability to build, what are they called, pagodas or something?
Yeah, so it's essentially I don't know what they're called, but it's like a different building location.
Type, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where then you're going to be scoring for the rows at the end of each round. So for a variety of
diversity
colours
of meeples, which means that
players.
other people are like, well, you've got one of these buildings there. I don't want to go there now because it's going to give you points. So that's another interesting dynamic. It also has endgame scoring tiles where only the first person to recruit that tile is going to have that endgame scoring
You're
condition.
also having to lock in a worker
That's
there
right, you
for the
lose
rest
a
of the
worker.
game.
Yeah, so there's some other dynamics here. It also introduces public workers that are available to use but don't belong to anybody.
And asymmetric player abilities that can be really wildly just
who knows?
swingy. Like they,
who knows
I don't
what
know
your
how balanced they are. Like when we've played with them, they've just been, like the games have been outrageous, which is probably a more of a fun experience. If you've kind of played the base enough, you're very comfortable with the base, and you're just wanting to
I
spice
felt like
it up
those were a little like under and overpowered. I felt like my Paul was less powerful than your Paul. Anyway,
not all Pauls are made the same.
Not all Pauls are equal.
That's a lesson for all of us.
Except in this game.
Yeah.
So in Brussels 1893 Belle Pot, you get this like 2 games in one, so you can play the original, you can play the extras. I kind of just like the original, I think.
I agree,
like if I was to get it out. But the biggest problem I had with this game is there was such variability in the amount of fun that we had playing it. At a
different player counts.
At a 4-player count, that's where this game shines. And it makes sense. There's so many area control elements. There's like worker placement gets tighter. And so at 4, it was just so much fun. Yeah. But then we've played it at 2, we've played it at 3, and it just doesn't hit the same.
Yeah, it was just
it does scale, but it's just not as fun. The dynamic of the bidding and everything is just not as great. There's not as many people moving around the artwork thing to change the cost of art or the resources.
No excitement. Like the excitement was way
down.
lower.
In fact, I really didn't like it at lower player counts. And at 4, I was like, no, this is like a different game. How am I meant to think about
this? It plays
this?
up to 5, so it often seems to be the case with Euros, where it's like the sweet spot is like 1 below the max player count. So like even like David Terci was like, when I was like, what's the best, what's your favorite player count for one of his games? He was like, every Euro is best at 3. So in most Euros are like a 2 to 4. This is a 2 to 5, and it's best. This is best at 4. So maybe that's the sweet spot.
I think 5 would be good too.
1 below.
No, I feel like
maybe 5 is just going to be too chaotic.
I feel like it's actually the mechanics of the game that's driving the fun that it is at a higher player count. So I do think that's something to heavily consider if you're thinking about picking up this game, is what player count are you going to play it at. It might be a little slow and drier at the lower player counts. It's the interactivity that makes it really fun. What did we give this? I don't know if I can keep this in my collection, our collection I should say, because I just don't know if it's going to get off the shelf. I really enjoyed my time with it at 4. I feel weird about having to explain the diversity in this game when it gets to the table. I actually feel uncomfortable being like, which of these characters do you want to be? Like, which Paul would you like to be? So for me, I have to take points off for that. So for me, it's a 7.2. I think that like the original game is really clever, but it's been introduced into games that I probably have more fun with. I think I agree. It's like I can appreciate this for the mechanical stuff, like the mechanics that it would have introduced at the time. Does it hold up for me? Not even at the 4-player count. It's like it was a fun experience, but it's like if I'm playing at a 4-player count or higher, this is not the game that I would pick. So I would be calling this. What did I give this? I forgot. No, okay. So I actually gave this a 7.4. So I think that's higher than your comment. What you just said. Higher.
Yeah.
I really like some of the mechanical elements. I don't like the fact that I don't know what I'm going to get depending on how many players are around the table.
Yeah, I think I found it like it's obviously satisfying enough. I love that I can go into different strategies and do different things. The Belle Epoque, depending on what you're playing with, too swingy, I would still just play the base game. But that's Brussels 1893.
And disclaimer is that we have a lot of Pauls in our life that we love very much. So
this is not
against
Pauls in the world. No. I'll go this way. So now, let's talk about Cosmoctopus. Cosmoctopus is a very adorable, but also cult-like kind of game, because this game is all about us being devotees of the great inky one, which is this purple
giant Cosmoctopus.
cosmic octopus. And so all we're going to be trying to do is be the ones to summon Cosmoctopus, and we're going to be doing it one tentacle, summoning one tentacle at a time. So this is essentially going to be a card and resource sort of engine building game, where you're going to have in the middle of the table, you have the spread of these different tiles, which is kind of like the locations. That's variable, so you can make it in all sorts of different configurations. And you have the great inky one that you're going to be moving around, and depending on where it's landing, you're going to be getting resources. Those resources are going to help you also then pay for different cards. And so there's three different cards. And I can't remember. It's like the scripture cards, which are the kind of black ones, which are related to like the ink element. And so all of those are going to give you like permanent resources, essentially. So then when you're buying or building other
like
cards,
Splendor.
yeah, exactly. You're getting that discount for those resources. Then there's the hallucination cards that are usually like a really powerful sort of one-off. I can't remember what the yellow cards are called, but then they also have like more ongoing benefits. So it's like, every time you get this resource, you'll get an extra one, or you'll do something else. And then you have the constellation cards, which are this really cool, almost like mini game within each card, where you're going to be adding resources to it only as you're acquiring them. So if you already had the resources when you played that card, you can't just move them onto it. It's like once you play the card, you need to acquire those resources and put them in the right sequence to create that constellation, and usually get tentacles that way. Then there's also Forbidden Knowledge, which is when you manage to get, I think now off the top of my head, it's like 13. Yeah, 13 of any one resource. You get to claim it and get, a couple of tentacles. So it's first to 8 tentacles, gets to summon the Great Inky One, and gets to be the ultimate devotee. So it's just, I'm so amused by this theme, and even just like the namings of the different types of cards. And
the artwork
the
is also beautiful.
The artwork is
especially
really
the
cool.
font choice is just very thematic. I really like
very
that.
like sci-fi, sort of vintage sci-fi reminiscent. That's sort of the aesthetic of the card. So it's like all of that. It's just so beautiful. The game, and even like the numbering that is used, is very like Fibonacci numbers with it. So there's like little Easter eggs, which I so love and appreciate. The game ultimately, obviously, it's an engine builder, and it's a bit more on the abstract kind of side.
Absolutely.
I'm also really, really bad at it, because whenever you play with this one, like she can like
I have not lost in this game.
Optimize anyone. So
and that includes you, Nick Murphy. But Cosmo
who was dead set. I was like, you're targeting me with this. You're doing this on purpose.
I don't think you can target someone with this game.
Yeah.
But for me, it's an interesting one, because it's one of those ones where to me it is an abstract puzzle, and what you're doing, I don't know if you mentioned, I may have tuned out, I'm so sorry. Where you're moving the octopus head around the puzzle.
We did cover that.
Yeah. Of course we did. Of course we covered that already. But to me, it's like I am setting my sights on a strategy. So once I've got the cards in play, I feel almost like I am playing that out in a sequence of steps that I've already decided the next 16 steps in my mind, with some backup plans of like, well, if that person takes the octopus head over there, I'll do that instead, and I'll change the order. And so for me, it's the way my brain works. Yeah. And so but that has, obviously that means that I'm pretty good at this game. Like, I can optimize it, but I'm not necessarily like having the best time, because I feel like from that point onwards, there's fairly low interaction with others. I'm just like, and because on your turn you can only really do one thing, I'm kind of just waiting for my turn to come around to see where the octopus is at, and then make that one move, and then maybe pivoting a little bit along the way, but mostly sticking to my plan. And for me, the game actually runs a little long, I would say. That's probably my critique of this game, is that I actually really enjoy the setup, the planning, but then it's the first person to get to 8 tentacles. I feel like that takes like a little bit longer than I would want it to. But I enjoy it. I really like the theme, although I do feel like for me it's just like this structured puzzle. very much a structure
and I think
puzzle.
that's the sort of the downside for me as well. It's like I love this theme, but then the actual play of it, and that's probably why I'm so bad at it. It's like I just, you know how like you're saying, oh, you know, I can sort of see the structure that I need to do and then just play that out. The whole time I'm just trying to figure out, like Rasmus's going, how can I, and like just making
you're
a
much
mess.
more instinctive.
But making a mess, like completely botching any possible synergies in between the cards that I'm playing. So like just the worst possible engine is being built.
Yeah. One thing I do like is I always love a race objective. So I always go for those
forbidden knowledge. Yeah.
I love.
Yeah, you often get multiples, which is really annoying because it's like they're giving you 2 at a time.
I enjoy that. The cards as well that are one-off cards for the first tentacle that you place. You get to choose one of these powerful cards, you know, and I like to race to do that. So I like that it guides you into what you want to do first, and then you're just trying to work back from that in terms of what do I need to collect, what do I need to do. I really like those constellation cards too, because if I can't do something that I wanted to do, at least I can keep chipping away at those. And if you can do that in a way where 2 of those cards have the same resource that they need, then you can build up the efficiency of what you're doing.
I often remember that towards the end of the game, like, oh, I've been wasting, or like, you know, when you're sort of playing, you're like, oh, had I had another one. But then they also cost a lot of resources to play them down, so you need to have built a good engine to. So yeah, it's quite tricky. So what's your rating for this?
I find it a really intriguing puzzle. But yeah, I gave it a 7.4. And for me, I just wish it was a little bit shorter. I quite like the puzzle. Like I can sit there and work through the puzzle, but it's just because it's played out in my mind. Not like, oh, I've won from the beginning. But definitely like just because it's very intuitive to me that
that's
a shorter amount of time would be better.
See, to me, it's still a mystery. So so it's a 7.7 for me. It's actually a lot higher.
That's a lot higher.
I'm so enamored by this theme and just the humor about it and the way that it's sort of been handled, and I still cannot figure it out. And even though it's a much more abstract experience than what I'm used to, it's like I think the theme just kind of like in all the other like aesthetics of it carry me through it.
And it has a solo mode.
I still cannot figure it out. So there's still plenty of experiences for me to have with it too.
It has a solo mode, so maybe you could try that. But it also has a co-op mode. So I just wanted to add that we've only played the competitive mode,
only.
of course.
Yeah. I have not played the solo either.
So that's Cosmoctopus. Next one. Yeah.
Okay.
We can go for glory.
Okay, let's go for glory. This is one of those games that made our relationship stronger.
I think this is the angriest I may have seen Maggie playing a game ever, with the exception of Blockus.
I mean, it's just,
but this is like next
that's very
level.
thematic, because for glory is all about. So you are you own a school of gladiators. And so you're going to be, through deck building, which I love, you're going to be 2-player, so PvP, so head-to-head, building up, essentially allocating your, recruiting and allocating gladiators to different arenas to have fights, increasing the ways that you obviously can have more, like improving the ways to get money, so that you can obviously, get better quality gladiators later on. Also acquiring tactic cards, so teaching your gladiators different tips and like tricks and tactics that they can use mid-battle that will kind of turn things around. Acquiring also more patrons, so patrons that are sometimes going to give you different abilities, but also they often will have the I can't remember what the seal is. It's like the particular kind of token that is a requirement before some of your gladiators can be played. So that can be a kind of limiting factor, particularly for the higher level gladiators. You need to have some of these influential patrons with you.
Yeah. So hold on, just mechanically, you are actually, so it's like a regular deck builder where you're trying to buy new cards, but in this game, the cards that you're choosing to buy are in 3 different markets.
Yes.
And that's, I think it's just a really, I wanted to pause there because that's actually a really interesting twist in that it's not just like a random distribution of cards. because they could have mixed them all together, but it's actually like, okay, I can focus on building up my deck in this particular area, and I always have that opportunity available to me. And I like that mechanically. It's like an interesting little twist. Sorry.
I agree, because that means that it gives you a lot more agency as opposed to just like being at the mercy of whatever comes up in a market. It's like, well, there is a market, but there's 3 cards usually on display for every different section. So there's 2 phases. So first is that phase where you're kind of planning and you're acquiring those cards and allocating your gladiators to the different arenas, and then those gladiators have a usually like a bloodlust on them, and the crowd has a bloodlust threshold that when you reach it, it triggers the arena phase. So it's like, okay, now we're done planning, now let's go into the fighting.
And I like that you have like that one last opportunity to add some late entrant by paying $3. I think, that late registration where you get to add another gladiator into the battle and surprise your opponent, because across the 3 arenas, you are looking at how many gladiators your opponent has against that and what their power is, what their initiative is, and what their defense and attack are going to be like. And because then it's going to play out in this battle phase where you're going to be fighting each other. And that's really interesting because you're damaging each other's gladiators, you're tapping cards, and you're also using the tactics that you have available to you as well. So you're kind of attacking, and then the other player gets an opportunity to respond to that attack. And so it becomes like this PvP card battle, which is a really kind of interesting one. Element I really love is that you can put cards away. You can stash cards away.
Yeah, that's right.
So across the first course of the game, because you are moving through your deck, you might come across a card and you're like, I need that later. So I'm going to start to bank that, and then you can pay later to get the cards back from that pile into your hand. And that's just a really interesting dynamic because money is so tight in this game. And because you're using money to get other things done, like putting in a late entrant or whatever else. And so it's like, I need those cards, but now I have no coins to get them back. And I put such great stuff in there.
I had
and
great
it's so
plans,
stressful.
and now I'm broke.
And once we got better at that PvP battle, that became really tense. It became so tense that Maggie, I thought, was actually going to walk out of the house.
It was the devastation, which I think actually is very thematic, because that's how you would feel if you'd see if your gladiators are just completely destroyed and it's just a massacre, and that hit me hard. So I'm like,
hit her hard. She was like, I hate this. I'm
gonna qualify. I hate that experience. Not necessarily like this is not a reflection on the game or the quality of the game. It's just I don't like experiences when it's like the competitive I win by destroying you. I like the that's why I tend to like more the Euro-y multiplayer. So it's like, oh, I've out optimized you, but it's not a direct like I was the one who brought your demise to be.
Maggie was really, really unhappy, and I wasn't making matters any better
by
saying to her that, well, you can't be super emotional about these things. You also have to look at it like a reviewer and look at the mechanics, and that just made her angrier.
Well,
I was like poking the bear
as well. Because you knew, you knew how
emotional about it.
Because I was like, to begin with, I'm like, this is not my kind of game. Like, why did we even get this game? Like, why did you even back?
I was like, because you love deck building.
It's like I do, but I hate direct confrontation. I don't enjoy, even when I have a great sort of move, I don't actually enjoy. I feel when it's like, my win is because I destroyed you. It's just not something that I enjoy. And that, again, not to say that that's, there's anything wrong with that. It's just that's just not my style.
I understand. And, thematically, this is so far out of our comfort zone. It's not really a world that we like to play in. And on top of that, it is PvP. So it's like an intense battling war style game. So not usually our thing, but this game mechanically has a lot of things going on that had me thinking about it long after, and now I can't cull it. And I was thinking about that in reflecting on the ratings for all the games in this episode, that there's something about it that is drawing me back in, that I want to play it again, that I'm thinking about how everything came together, that I'm thinking about how I could do things better.
It's quite a rich design. There's a lot packed into it, and there's a lot of experience. And like, for example, those tactics, like I remember just going really gladiator strong, and then like Amy would destroy me with a whole, like, you know, maybe she didn't have very strong gladiators, but they knew stuff that just came out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, there's a lot of
like, I don't super love the rule
layers.
book. I don't love the rule book. I don't love the font choice, but there's something about it mechanically that's just got that, like, that feels different, like new and different enough that I want to keep exploring it.
Okay.
I gave this game a 7.9. I think the design is really solid. If you enjoy this world, if you enjoy that battling, if you enjoy deck building, I think this is definitely one to check out if you like any of those things. Yeah.
So this is an interesting one because my score, as you can imagine, is going to be a lot lower in terms of my wanting to play it, but I'm very divided because if I separate myself from my own experience, I can see there's a lot in this that is really good and has been brought together really, really well. So I'm going to give it a 7.2 for me, which is quite high considering it's like, if you ask me, do I want to play it again? Probably not. Like, I'll play it. Probably not with you. Because you poke the bear too much while I'm in the middle of my existential struggle. But it is so intriguing and so, there's so much in it. So that's
interesting game. That is for glory.
All right.
Okay, and now we'll go to the last two, which are two big ones.
Oh no.
So this is Earth. We have the wooden insert in there, so I'm hoping that everything was okay then when I tipped it.
Did not sound okay.
Well, maybe it
might be. They might just be moving like sideways, which is fine.
Yeah, so this is a fairly recent release as well. We have been probably notably fairly quiet about this game. This game had a lot of a lot of attention early on. And it kind of came onto the hotness and everyone was playing this game. As were we, because we played this for the first time with Rado, who taught us this game at Dice Tower West in February this year. And it didn't land very well with us, and so we didn't want to have it feature on the channel until we'd had an opportunity to play it a lot more so we could articulate ourselves a little bit more about that. So this game, Earth, if you haven't heard of it before, is a game where you are building up an ecosystem that consists of flora, different flora from around the world, and this is these are cards, and the cards are going to have different soil costs to be able to place them out into your 4x4 grid that you're building. But it's also like this engine building element. Well, actually, it's a huge engine building game because what's happening is on your turn, you're choosing one of four main actions to take. And those actions might be to get more cards, to get more soil so that you can plant more cards, to plant cards, and also to start to develop some of the growth elements that can happen on your cards, as well as the I think they're called seeds or something. I think that's not quite right, but anyway, something along those lines. So the kind of the building up the victory points that exist within your 4x4 grid. But when you choose one of those four main actions, everybody else gets to do a similar action of lesser power at the same time as you. So this game is really played simultaneously. One person is making the main choice, everybody else gets to activate that, and then, you know, in turn order, you get to be the active player getting the more powerful choice. But what's interesting is depending on which color is being activated, you also get to activate every card in your tableau of that color in order from the top left all the way through to the bottom right along the rows. And so it's also important to think about what is the order in which I'm placing these cards, and where am I going to go like strong? What area am I going to go strong in? So maybe I want to have all the red cards. So when that red action comes up, or if I trigger the red action, I'm going to get all these benefits. And that has this interesting dynamic where other people then are like, well, Amy's got like all these red cards. Do I really want to trigger the red action again?
Yeah. Like, don't give her that again.
Yeah, not again. And now she's sitting there playing out all of the flow-on effects of that. There are also some race objectives in this game, so that's where the fauna comes in. So there are animal cards that are going to give you different race objectives to aim for, as well as a couple of other end game conditions that are going to be non-race, but are going to be two ways that your tableau is going to score at the end of the game, plus you have a private one on your board. And there's a whole host of other things going on, but let's just talk about how we felt about it. This game is an interesting one for me because it's just a game that doesn't fit with my natural style. There are elements I really like about this game, particularly the engine building element. I can see why people love that about this game, because if you do hand management well, if you focus your strategy well, you can end up getting these like amazing combos, even when you're not the active player, when someone else is doing something and you're like, great, now I get to do 50 things, hold my beer, like here we go. And so you're doing a lot of things, but for my personal taste, there's a lack of interaction. So one thing is the lack of interaction between players. I do feel like you're really playing your own puzzle, aside from the race objective elements, which is one of my favorite elements of the game because of the fact that it is more interactive. I'm trying to beat Maggie to get to those top scores.
And I'm just trying to figure out what's going on, like the whole time.
And the other thing for me is it's a little bit fiddly, and it can lead to some long turns because if you're playing out your tableau, and because of the fact that you're like, okay, if I destroy, like this action allows me to destroy one part of my tableau, and then if I do that, I get this, and then if I get this, then I can trade it for that, and then I get 2 more of these, and then I feel like that is just not my preferred way of playing it. I find it very fiddly, and it's just like, to me, it's just, I don't know, it's not like engaging with other players. It's just like a lot of like, what I'm doing over here.
I found this experience super abstract. And even though I can see how, like in the individual cards, they have that little bit of like the fun fact about, that particular either terrain or that particular, plant. And there might be a little bit of a connection between what it does and but the reality is that because there's so much going on, there's so many different objectives, and sometimes they're pulling you in all sorts of different directions. And then every card, there's so many cards that give you kind of either objectives by the end of the game, or like in your tableau, build this or have all these. There's just so much going on that I cannot, my mind just is not built like that. I just cannot keep track of all those things going on. And so then as things are triggering, as all the 4 different actions are triggering, one, I kind of feel like it's, when I'm doing it, it's like, I never feel like it's even all that powerful. And when someone else triggers it, it's like somehow I always have managed to also not have a powerful thing that gets triggered. So it's the whole time I'm just like, I just can't feel like as satisfying or make logical sense of the flow of this.
Yeah, and if you compare it to something like Wingspan, which has similar cards, the action that they enable is very thematically driven by the type of bird.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is, I don't know, because there's so few actions, because it's mostly about collecting things and spending things, it doesn't feel like that connection is very strong. So I can see, like, there probably is some thematic element that's been added.
So many cards.
Yeah, there's so many cards.
It's not like,
but people are going to love that.
Oh, yeah,
about
absolutely.
It.
So I think it's like, this is a mismatch of our preferences.
Yeah.
Like, there's people that are going to love this, this sort of more abstracty. They've got a million different tracks and goals that I could aim for, but it's like, it's just
not a game for us.
No.
But I gave it a 7. I enjoy it when I play it. It's just not a game that I would probably ever, there are other games that I would pick before this one, just because of the low level of interactivity for me. Yeah.
Actually, I'm surprised that I gave it a higher one than you. Like I said, I gave it a 7.2. I was like, this is like, while I'm playing it, I'm like, okay, but I do find at the end of it, I'm just like a bit overwhelmed by all the different possibilities. So that's Earth.
That is Earth.
And the final one.
We've been talking for a long time in this episode. That's
my goodness.
Trying to speed things
lots
up.
of big games.
So much to cover. The last one is another game that we've kind of been quite quiet about, but is
sitting on for a while.
Yeah, but I was so hotly anticipating this game. It's by one of my favorite designers, Simone Luciani, as well as another designer as well. It was something that I backed a long time ago. It felt like it took so long to come in.
It's Darwin's Journey.
It's just Darwin's Journey, and this is the collector's edition because I did go all in when we backed it. And it's it's a worker placement game, essentially. And what you're doing is you're following in the footsteps of Darwin through the Galapagos Islands to really try and find different species of animals to place into a museum. So that, we can learn more about...
Yeah, you're recording all the different species and you're kind of seeing which ones have you studied and...
feed into the evolution theory, I suppose. And so what you're going to be doing in this game is you have some workers that are unskilled at the start of the game that you're going to be upskilling. And that's an interesting part of this game. So mechanically, what's different about it is that you are adding these wax seals to your workers that enables them to unlock different areas that they at the beginning of the game cannot access because they don't have the right skill set. So the way that you skill those up is variable between the players because we're all on our own mission to do different things. So that's really interesting. The other interesting part about it is that the worker placement element is quite restrictive in that if you're not the first player to go in a certain area, you're going to have to pay money to go there, and it's quite expensive. Plus, on top of that, the worker placement spots are going to evolve throughout the game because players have the ability to build new spots using these looking glass little tokens in the deluxe edition where you're going to be placing them out, and now that spot is available for anybody to go to, but because you built it, you get a little bonus if other people go there. So that's a really little interesting dynamic. There's also this whole Galapagos Island network where you're going to be exploring with a little meeple. That meeple is going to be traveling around the islands, and you're going to get bonuses along the way. There's also that you're following the HMS Beagle along this track with your ship, and you want to try and stay ahead of it. So that's this objective that's kind of in the back of your mind because the every round there's going to be a different scoring that's going to happen, but you lose points for that scoring condition unless you're ahead of at least as far as the
further back you
Beagle.
are, the more points you're going to lose.
The
more you're going to be penalized.
That's an interesting element, but then ultimately what you really want to be doing is collecting those different species on your board and then delivering them to the museum, because when you do that, you're going to grow in prestige and renown as a researcher, and that is going to be one of the key ways to score points at the end of the game. So there's a lot going on here. This is very point salady. There are different things that you can focus on in order to get victory points, and everyone can take a slightly different approach to it.
And then there's a truckload of expansions and a whole other side to the board that also brings in a few more cards and different little abilities and things.
Yeah, so it has a real classic Euro feel. It definitely mostly feels like a worker placement game because of the things you're doing, and it's a restrictive one at that. It's very challenging to keep your money supply going, which you do need. It's just really important to and it feels tense because of that.
Also building these tiles onto your board that are kind of optional, but can mean a lot of either big points at the end of the game. But
special
also
abilities
special
throughout
abilities
the game.
And
Unlocking another worker. So there's lots going on, but the it's really important. Turn order is really important in this game because if you start having to go places where you're having to pay money or there's just no worker placement spots left, it gets really restrictive. So this is a very big, sprawling game. And it's a game that I should love more than I do. I really like this game. But I don't know, and I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been thinking about talking about it a lot. It's a challenging game to teach in that there's a lot of pieces.
It's a lot of stuff, lots of areas, lots of, and then this works like this. And then this works like this. And then there's this bit.
So there's a little bit of a learning curve to get it to the table. You do need to explain all the different parts, but that's the true of other heavy Euros. I feel like the tension is there, but maybe it's not as strong as in other games. I feel like, from the same designer, Lorenzo Il Magnifico feels more tense in the worker placement, which is strange because this one is quite restrictive, but I never feel that sense of it being completely punishing. I like a punishing game. This game, I feel like there's always something that I can do. you know, if I'm not doing that, well, maybe I'll just move my ship and get some points that way. So the thing is, it never feels like I have a clear plan that I'm following through to fruition. It always feels like you have to be a bit opportunistic based on what other players are doing because of the worker placement spots being restrictive, which, as I described, that's pretty much like any other worker placement game. But so I don't know, it just didn't hit quite as hard as some of the
I enjoy
other
my
games.
time. Like every time I sort of play it, I'm like, yeah, I have fun. But then by the end of it, I'm like, would I rather play this than any other game that is sort of in this sort of same space? And the answer is usually no.
It's a lot to set up. It's a lot, there's just a lot going on that it's like, it's really hard to find an occasion for this game.
And it's a bit of a table hog as well, because then you've got, obviously, the main board is quite big, but then all the individual player boards, and then you're having to put things kind of like a little bit around them, and so you kind of need to have the space to do it. So it does feel like, an event to like put everything onto the table.
And I enjoy it. And if you set it up, I'll play it with you because I really like it. But it's like a little bit too much. There's a little bit too much going on for the payoff. And
I
that's
feel like you mentioned Lorenzo. Lorenzo, I feel like it manages to do all of that in a much more elegant, tighter way. And you still get that satisfying payoff.
It's like a couple too many things going on that makes it just a little inaccessible. And I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. So
what's
anyway,
your rating for
I'm
that?
giving it a 7.7. Kind of places it in a similar realm to something like Tapestry, which is a game that I also just enjoy, but for some reason just doesn't like hit like it does for other people. So for me, 7.7.
For me, it's a 7.5. I enjoy my time with it, but again, it just nothing of it like wow, or like made me go, oh my goodness, didn't push it over the edge.
Anyway,
that's
Star
Star
Wars
Wars
Journey.
Journey.
Yeah, so that was a mix of games, old and new. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you still are enjoying this series. Please drop it down in the comments below. Do you own any of these games? Do you completely disagree with us? Tell us why some of the ones that don't work for us really work for you, or vice versa. Would love to hear from you. But if you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.